groups. Um, we are not going to be recording those. The whole idea there is that you get the opportunity to really talk about what this looks like in practice in a confidential and safe environment. We'll come back, close this out and put a clean bow on it, and hopefully get you back to probably something that you have going on next, right around 12:55. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start jumping in. Just for those of you who don't know as much about us, or it's been a minute since you've heard what we do here at Illoominus. We are an AI-powered employee data platform. Essentially, what that means is we're the first employee data platform that's bringing together the power of AI and a community of best practices to help organizations to navigate a lot of the changes in the workforce and in technology that we're seeing today. So we work in particular with mid-market companies. I love to see some of our customers, current customers, early customers joining us today. We're super community focused, and so this community is a really important part of it's not just about the technology and the data to help you to make those decisions within your organization. It's also about the people and learnings of what's happening along the way. With that, what we're really excited to announce is that everybody that's attending today is also going to get a free copy of the book. I had the opportunity to read it early on, and I'm so excited that we're going to get the chance to share this with you all. We're partnering with a really great company called Offsite. So Kim, I want to turn it over to you to intro yourself, talk a little bit about Offsite, and then we'll start over to the fireside chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Noelle. And thank you for inviting us to be a part of this. We are very excited and excited that everybody gets a copy of the book. My name is Kim Ford. I am the head of client success at Offsite. And actually, before I jump in and tell you a little bit about Offsite, I would love to get a little engagement. And like a lot of you are, in people roles and wear a lot of hats. So I'm curious what your reaction is when you're tasked with having to plan your company offsite or an executive retreat. So if you want to put in the chat like an emoji of what emotions that brings up for you. I know I'm sure it can be across the spectrum. And then while you're doing that, I will give you an overview and of what Offsite does. So our big goal and mission is to save companies time, money, and stress in helping you plan your offsite. And we have kind of resources and I guess across the spectrum. So I'm in head of client success. So we do end-to-end event planning services from booking your amazing hotels with our partners all the way to the very end. We do a lot of strategic thinking and designing your programs. We do all the logistics. We advocate and negotiate for you with all of your vendors and venues. And then on the other side of it, we also have a marketplace that is like Airbnb-esque where you can plan your own offsite for someone who doesn't necessarily need that end-to-end planning service. You can go on our site. We have thousands of hotels that we've partnered with that we get great discounts with. And we have lots of vendors like photographers, activity vendors, name badge creators, like everything that you can think of, we partner with. So feel free to check out offsite.com. And then I'll just close out. We actually are running a promotion right now where if I can put it in the link or feel free to DM me. We are giving away $25,000 worth of event planning services. So if you want to submit your name in the hat, we have until Halloween to submit, and we will pick a lucky company to use Offsite for free, and we will plan your whole offsite from beginning to end. Thank you for everyone who, your your emotions. I like that. And Noelle, I will hand it back to you.
Thanks, Kim, and thanks for joining us again. Awesome. All right. I'm so excited to introduce our speakers for today. I will first start with James D. White. Has been, I'm very fortunate that he's been such a critical part of Illoominus as both an investor and an advisor. He is the former CEO and chair at Jamba, and has worn many different hats over the years in leadership at companies, and actually has sat on maybe 20 different boards over the last 20 years. Currently is involved with organizations on the board at Kava, The Honest Company, Affirm, Greenlight Financial, and many others. And so comes with just a wealth of experience in writing this book and bringing his perspective to the table. We're also joined by Krista White. Krista is James's daughter, and they have co-written the book together. Um, Krista is a fantastic writer. She is also a founder and CEO of various organizations, and they've partnered on now a couple of different books, including Anti-Racist Leadership and Culture Design. And so we're just so excited to have them both join us. I don't know, James, Krista, if there's anything else that you want to say about your backgrounds and experience before we jump in.
I think thank you for your introduction. And Dad, if you don't have anything else, I'd love to jump in.
Yeah, the only comment I'd make is I'm no longer on the Affirm board, but sit on the Kava Simply Good Foods board, and I chair the Honest Company board.
Fantastic.
So, Noelle,
All
I
right,
think we're ready to go.
let's do it. All right. Let's just jump in here. Book is coming out November 11th, right?
Yep.
On culture design. Talk to us a little bit about many of us are facing so much change in the workforce, in technology, in the economy. There's so much change that is happening around us. Talk to us a little bit about why the book is really important for now, and tell us a little bit more about how it came to be.
Yeah, I'd start, Krista, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'd start with really the thesis of the book. I mean, we firmly believe that every company has culture that they intentionally build by design, or you have culture by default. And kind of our thesis is that every company is going to have culture, so you might as well build the one that you want. Is kind of our working thesis going into the writing of the book. We're very focused on an operator's view. So the book has a foundation that represents my 30 years of experience plus as an operating executive across a range of industries, but also captures 20 years in the boardroom. But importantly, we talked to a dozen executives to pull different sizes, different scale companies to really pull in a current view from each of them around culture. So, Chris, I don't know what you'd add, and we'll kind of jump into the discussion here.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd add is one of the things that was so important to us really, we've been doing this work together for several years now, and this is our second book together. And something we've really come to appreciate is this multi-generational perspective that we have, and perspectives from both different career backgrounds and different places in our career has given us a lot of insight into how this multi-generational workplace we find ourselves in can work well. There is even in, our partnership is like a microcosm of that, of the push and pull, the learning from each other instead of saying, well, I'm over here and you're over here. Where do we meet in the middle? What can we learn from each other? Is just going to be so crucial now and going forward for generations in the workplace.
And maybe, the other point I'd make to make sure I answered fully your question We don't think there's ever been a more challenging time to be a CEO, a CHRO, a CPO. We've got societal impacts, we've got geopolitical impacts in the workforce, and then we have 4 to 5 generations, depending on how you think about it, in the workforce. So there's never been a more important time to be intentional and focused on culture and really bringing culture to life in a really thoughtful way. And we think that's where the lessons will benefit the folks that are on this call related to culture and culture design.
Yeah, yeah. And it's, I mean, Krista, what I keep hearing through all of this is just change. And I feel like that's what all of us are feeling and experiencing, is just the level of change that's happening around us. And in many ways, culture and connecting back to, having a foundation of trust and having that connectivity. That's a really big challenge for this group, is how you create kind of that stability inside of all of this change. What I really like about, working with the two of you is that I think you always bring to the table a very practical view. And so it's not, just and not that those things are not helpful, but you really break down tangible ways to think about this. And one of the things that I really appreciated about the book is that you bring in a framework on how to think about this and how leaders can think about this. I'll read, one of the framework that you talk about is know what matters, do what matters, measure what matters. Tell us more about how you think about this framework and how leaders can take this back to their organization.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in on that, Dad. Know what matters, do what matters, measure what matters, in that order is how we think about this work. One of the issues that people have time and time again is in taking action with a lack of intention around it. We've seen this over the past several years a lot, of in crisis mode of we have to do something, let's just do something. The know what matters piece of it is so important to understanding the context, not only of the market and the communities you serve, but of your specific organization. Every organization has its own needs. That's a combination of the people who are there, where it's going, and the place where it sits today. So we always start with empathy when we're working with companies and with leaders, because it's so crucially important to just get back to that human aspect of a corporation. That's like the most important place to start for us. Doing what matters speaks a lot to how we think about operationalizing culture design as not a check the box activity, but as something. Culture is something you do every day. It's a behavior. Measure what matters, briefly, is making sure that you are keeping track of the health of your culture, of treating it like other types of activities in your business, that it's something that you continuously revisit, and make sure it's working so you can iterate if necessary. Dad, I'll let you continue if there's.
Yeah, and the only other points I'd make is one of the points that I'd emphasize for this group. We firmly believe that empathy is a core capability. And the best companies and the best leaders, especially in the people space, are very focused on building this historically not often focused on capability. The best leaders are really spending time thinking about how to make this an important capability as they're looking for the right leadership in this moment. So that's a point maybe we can talk about in the breakouts. And then I just share a couple ways that we think about culture. We interviewed a 3 or 4 time CMO, Tony Wells, and Tony talks about culture being the software that the company runs on. So I'll let that kind of sink in for the group. Or the Shake Shack founder talks about culture being all the things that we say we stand for minus what we allow inside the company. And for us, we really want to emphasize the point that in this really challenging time, where we're all being challenged to do more, in many cases with less, there needs to be a North Star in terms of how to activate and bring culture and values to life. So the do what matters for us really is, how do you operationalize it? What's the operating rhythm look like in the company as it relates to the humans? What are the rituals inside a company that are important? What do we all hold each other accountable to from how we show up as leaders, and how the people in the organization will experience the company? And then the final point is measure what matters. Anything in business that is important, and we believe culture and how your culture comes to life is incredibly important. So you measure it, and it's both quantitative and qualitative. We love the work that we're doing with Noelle, just connecting the dots and having the appropriate dashboards as a people leader or an HR leader, we think couldn't be more important, and then becomes a virtuous cycle as you build forward.
It's great. Pulling on the string on measurement, because that's what we spend a lot of time thinking about. And
we knew you would.
Yeah. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't. But on that, if we're being honest, many of us may be bought in of understanding the importance of culture, and we see the tangible impacts that it makes. Talk to us about how you talk about this to the skeptics. It's like, in a good economy, people invest in things like this. People invest in culture. People invest in employee engagement opportunities. In our market right now, and what we continue to hear, is that everything is about creating high-performing teams. You've seen a lot. How do you connect the through line between culture and high-performing teams?
Well, the point that I'd make, and we've got lots of illustrative examples in the book. We've got sections in many of the chapters that we call culture stories from the field, and we highlight lots of different kinds of organizations. I'll maybe connect the dots by sharing one of the companies we highlight in the book is Bay Club. They're a lifestyle fitness, largely West Coast company. They have an annual gathering that they call Polaris. I happened to do the kickoff with them last week, and actually got my first physical copy of the book at that event, because they were able to work with our publisher and have books in advance for the 500 people that were attending their event. But they so strongly believe in nurturing and kind of building for their culture. They gather their leaders on an annual basis to do what I would describe as a renewal around what's important, what matters. They set the context for the next year, and they do an annual gathering, kind of a reminder of how the culture inside that company comes to life. And it starts with the CEO. And we believe it always starts with the CEO and the executive team. They've got to model and kind of lead and role model and demonstrate the culture. So that event was a really fantastic chance for me to participate. And I participated in a couple of those events with this company because I sit on the board. But this particular team and CEO hadn't refreshed their the values and their culture statement for about a dozen years, and they 4 or 5 years ago spent 6 months to really do the diagnostics. We would describe it as kind of the knowing what matters, the archaeological dig around the cultural artifacts. And one of the things that they talk about is they always honor the past, because Bay Club is an amalgamation of lots of acquired businesses. So over the last 5 years, they've literally doubled the size of their company, doubled the size of their employee base. And how, in that kind of rapidly changing environment, do you maintain and reinforce the culture? And they use this Polaris event as a grounding kind of function inside the company. So that's one example. Another example in the book is the Honest Company CEO, Carla Vernone, joined the company a few years ago, and she's got a largely millennial Gen Z workforce. And she did something that we thought was just fascinating in terms of leading change. The animated movie Inside Out, she used as a way. So if you've all seen Inside Out and you think about the thought bubbles of the different emotions that we're all experiencing at a period of time, she uses that as a metaphor to check in with her team over time. So she introduced this as the change model whenever she kicks off a meeting, whether it's a large scale town hall or just individual meetings, to really acknowledge the different places that the people in the room, given all the significant changes in the environment, what people might be feeling. So 3 years ago, she introduced this idea. Last year, she took her entire team to see Inside Out 2 as just a learning experience, and play forward to her year 3. She's now established the first Wednesday in September, kind of post Labor Day, as a time for the company to renew itself, both individually and collectively, around values. And because she was using Inside Out, she actually had the producer, one of the producers of the one of the filmmakers, to join her team to kind of just talk through the making of the movie, but more importantly, to embed this ritual of thinking about culture and values and both the individual and collective responsibility to bring that to life. So those are 2 examples.
That's great. I really like how those companies are bringing this to life. One of the things you mentioned earlier, and I think we've continued to pull on over time with you, James, is culture. Your culture is what you measure. And when you really let that sink in, what we've also talked about is this idea of culture 360. So culture isn't something that just exists in an engagement survey that is done a couple of times a year. It's something that, as you said, it's the operating system. It's ongoing, pulsing, ongoing understanding of how engagement, culture, the health of it across the organization. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about how you're seeing organizations best use this kind of data to help to tell the story of how it's creating high-performing organizations.
Yeah, I think we think about it both, from a quantitative measurement perspective, but it's also qualitative. So things as simple as the commitments that the leaders make to and inside their organization. So one of my favorite leaders is Doug Conant, who was the former CEO of Campbell Soup, and he has a history of doing letters, notes of gratitude to his employee base. So he's written 30,000 of those notes and counting over the course of his career. That's a lot of thank yous and notes of gratitude. So it could be something as simple as that. It could be the CEO, one of the CEOs that we interviewed for the book, talked about how important his commitment to culture was. And he made a commitment to the organization's technology company, about 2,000 employees. So 2 times per month, every month for the last 5 years, he's held our culture discussion inside his company. He said, James, Krista, as long as 200 people show up, for me to, really bring to life our values and emphasize the things that are important in this culture. So the construct of these meetings is they highlight, a department, a person, they might bring in an outside speaker, but there's always 15 minutes for anonymous questions and feedback for the CEO. And I was surprised, knowing how busy a CEO is. I said, so you're telling me that you do this 24 times a year where you get on this? He said, no matter where I am in the world, even if I'm up at, on the other, side of the world, and I'm up at 2 a.m., that 1 hour, and being able to embed what we believe in from a culture and value perspective is so important to unlocking the full potential of the company. Haven't missed in 5 years.
Yeah.
Krista, what would you add?
Yeah, I love that. I love that example. And what I would add around measurement and technology and tools like Illoominus really allows for better cross-functional communication, having that visibility and having that communication and integration with all the tools you're using is just so important. I mean, one of the things that we come up against a lot and see a lot out in the world is the siloed communication, and that some of that is habit, but some of that is built because of a lack of trust, a lack of support at different levels of the organization. So I just think that having those cross-functional systems is part of building in communication and transparency from the top down and across the organization. Transparency, communication, how you communicate, and as Dad said, like how you tell those stories, that qualitative story, for many people in the organization is going to be more important than the numbers. Of course, you also want to find ways to share the numbers and the quantitative data in a way that is accessible and as transparent as it can be. But humans, pardon me, humans communicate with stories. We've always communicated with stories. And that's one of the reasons I'm a writer, is that's like a way in to connect to people. And that doesn't change when you're at work. So one of our hopes with this book is to bring those culture stories from the field, to have this rich breadth of examples of real world things that people are doing in real life, and the integration with the human emotions that drive these people, because these things, they can't be separated. So that's what I would, the only other thing I would add to this point a little earlier, I suppose, is that you can't sustain and retain a high performing team if you don't invest in culture continuously. You might get some great stuff out of people, but they're going to burn out, they're going to quit, they're going to drop down. So that's the connection I would make between those things that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And with the measurement, how does the measurement support you to have a richer story about your people? So it's more around, and some of you, we've had this conversation with you as well, of, if I've got high potential individuals within my organization, am I noticing that those are the people that are leaving? If I've got low potential, or not low potential, but low performers within the organization, am I actioning on that so that there is accountability for, those high performing teams? And so by being able to bring that together, you're able to tell a much richer story about, the impacts of some of this work that you're doing around culture to really be able to start connecting those dots. I want to make sure that we have enough time here to have you all talk about this and really talk about, how practically you're seeing this come to life within your organizations. So, Marcus, if we move to the next slide, and then I think we'll come back and, close this conclude this conversation, but I want to bring some additional voices into the conversation. With these breakout group discussions, a couple of things that I will share. This is meant to allow you to speak the truth about what's happening within your organizations. I'm going to turn off the recording here. And so remain open, listen actively. These are not recorded. And so take the lessons, not necessarily the stories, so that you can truly, get something of value out of the conversation. I'm going to also just share on the breakout discussion topics. First question for you all would be, what are the practical tips on bringing this framework back to your organization? So around knowing what matters, doing what matters, and measuring what matters. Talk a little bit about how you're seeing this come to life, potential best practices or challenges that you're having. How are you currently measuring your culture? So, what's missing on tying that back to business performance? And then the last thing, which I think is really important, is how are you getting executive buy-in from your leaders on how to implement this within your organizations? So I'm going to stop the recording. Marcus is going to